is a great little feature in Apple Motion that will let you make your text in Final Cut Pro completely multicolored in just one click. My name is Anthony, and I've been using Final Cut Pro and Apple Motion for the past 15 years, and recently I found this really cool little trick that lets you do this multicolored text effect. As we all know, computers store color as numerical values in red, green and blue channels, and it's the same for Apple Motion and Final Cut Pro. This means that you can use one of Apple Motion's behaviors to play around with these values in any way you want, and that can create some really cool effects, like this, or like this, or like this. And of course, because Apple Motion and Final Cut Pro talk so well to each other, you can then turn this into a fully customizable title overlay to use in any of your projects in Final Cut Pro. So let's get started. We are starting here with a regular Final Cut title project. I have deleted the background placeholder because it's not really needed for this project. If you want to do something else with it, you can always keep it in. If we go into the text properties and the appearance settings, you'll see that everything is pretty standard. We don't actually need to worry about these because the effect we're going to use will overwrite these properties. Now, this whole effect works on the text sequencer behavior. So we're going to go into our behaviors list, go down to text animation and bring in sequence text and put it on our text. Go back into the inspector and look in the behaviors tab. You'll see that there is a number of different parameters that we can play around with here. When you open up this drop down menu, you'll see all of them. You've got the format for the text, which is what we were just looking at, 3D text, which we'll talk about later, and then face, outline, all these different things. But the one we want is face color. As I said before, different colors are stored as numerical values by the computer. That means that once we put color as an option in the sequence text behavior, we can play around with it to our heart's content. But for now, we're just going to leave this as white. The animate dropdown will let you choose how the text is grouped for this effect. If you have a large amount of text, you may want to consider making it a word or a line that is affected. But for us, with a smaller amount of text, we're going to stick to character because that means every individual letter will have a different color once the effect is done. And the key to this whole effect working is our variance options. Variance just means randomness. How far away from our original starting color we can make this. So we're just going to whack it all the way up to 100%. And there we go. Straight away we've got random color. But this doesn't necessarily look so good. So we're going to do a few things to try and make it just look a little bit nicer. I like to start by boosting up the minimum value. Now this minimum value basically means how close to 0 any value can get. 0 is black. So if we put it at 20%, then the text will be a little brighter. Of course, the opposite would be true for maximum, but because we already have our text set to white, it's not going to make that much of a difference. Our noisiness value will add a little bit more randomness to the color, but it's really a setting that's used for an effect that is done over time, and we don't want that to really happen, so we're just going to leave that at 0.5. And the fun part of this whole effect is the random seed. Every time you change this, the color's going to change. And you can just click, click, click all the way through until you find something that you like. For now though, we'll just leave it at 0 because I actually like how this one looks. So now I've got the color looking just how I want it, but we have a problem. As soon as we play the clip, everything starts turning to white, our original color. So we need to find a fix for that. If you go back into your inspector, you'll see that there is a speed option. Now usually this is just set to constant or ease in and out to make it smoothing, but we actually want to set it to custom, and then this will give us keyframe options. Now motion will force there to be keyframes here. You can't just delete them, but what we can do is put them both to 0, meaning that everything is staying on that first frame. And that way we never get any change to our color and we can just keep it as it is for the whole project. And there you have it. That is basically how this effect works. You add a text sequencer to your text that affects the color, and then you just whack up the variants and have some fun. But maybe you don't want your text to be completely random. Maybe you want it linked to a particular color, like a red or a green. All you need to do for that is just go and change it to the color you want, and then bring the variance down a little bit. This lets you dial in exactly how much randomness you want, so you can fit this effect in with whatever theme you already have going. Just get the color close enough with a little bit of change, or just go completely wild. It's up to you. All you have to remember is to make this text sequencer separate from anything else you want to do. So as I drop another text effect on, this as an arrange in animator, you'll see that once they're separate, both work well together. You just can't have them as part of the same text sequencer. 3D text is essentially the same as 2D text, but there's a few little differences. So I've loaded up here just one of the 3D text presets. I've dropped in my text sequencer. But when you go into the settings, you will see that there's actually multiple different color layers for 3D text, depending on how many layers that preset or whatever you've created has. So you need to make sure that you're changing the color of all of them. As I go back into the behaviors tab, if I only choose one of these parameters and try and change the variance, it won't look as good because there's still the second layer that's overlaying it, and you just get kind of a more washed out look. So we need to make sure that every substance layer that has a color parameter is added to the text sequencer. That way you'll get a really nice looking effect in 3D as well. And lastly, we need to make this work in Final Cut Pro. So back in our original flat version, we're going to publish some parameters, starting with, of course, the color. We're going to publish how we want it animated, the animate dropdown. We're going to publish our variance, and we're going to publish our random seed. Now, there are one or two other parameters you may want to publish, such as the minimum and maximum, but they're not vital for this to work. And if we go and look in our project properties in the inspector, you'll see these available now that will be used in Final Cut Pro whenever you open up the title in there. Thanks for watching the video. If you found this helpful, please hit the like button down below. If you end up using this in one of your projects, just send me a link to it because I'd love to see the end results. And if you want to see more tutorials like this, then please just hit subscribe.